Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Crimson Crossover podcast presented by the Field of 68 and JJ Apparel. I'm your host, Christian Sykes, joined as always with Charles Branch and a special guest we have tonight, Michael Harper. Unfortunately, Joey had some family things come up, so Michael, who's been a guest in previous episodes, is a going to join us tonight. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing great. How are you?
Can't complain. Charles?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. I'm excited about Feast Week. Obviously, our tournament being the inaugural Players Era, but there's also Battle for Atlantis and Maui has some decent fields too. So some really good college basketball uh, this week, and there's been good college basketball as well in these early MTE tournaments. So we're in the thick of it now.
Well, not even that. We were talking about kind of our opponents, which we'll get into, and shout out Petway, who got a big win over a future opponent of ours, the Rutgers. Uh, the Rutgers, wow, Rutgers at home, a ranked win for them, and it's just kind of the nature of college basketball this season, where I think the theme is going to be the same as it was last year. It's tough to win on the road. And I know Kennesaw State is in a daunting road environment, but um, when you're out of your element, it's tough to win. And that's what Rutgers kind of saw, I guess, today when we're recording this.
Well, credit to Rutgers. I know that game was probably for Ace Bailey to allow some people close to him to go see him, but credit to them for scheduling that game at Kennesaw State. And obviously a ton of credit to Coach Petway for getting the win. They were up as much as 21 points in that game, and Rutgers fought back and made it close. It's kind of looking over just some of the numbers, and Kennesaw State killed them on the glass. I think they almost doubled them up rebounding. Um, but even Kennesaw State had 22 turnovers to Rutgers 9, and then they still come away with the win. So very impressive win for Kennesaw State for Coach Pett, and we'll obviously get our shot here against Rutgers here in the next few days.
Yeah, it's fun watching the former our former staff members under Oates having some success this year. With obviously we saw what Brian Hodgson's doing with Arkansas State, and then Charlie Henry coming out and having a good start early after struggling last year. And having a really good start. It's fun to watch and good to see. It's really fun to see is the way they're implementing the NATO system within their own teams.
Yeah, I haven't really checked on what Conch is doing at UTSA, but the I do know that I think who was it? I forget who said this. That they put out a tweet. Maybe Sean Miller. I think so. Put out a tweet where um, Charlie Henry's 4-2, Antoine Petway's 5-1, and then Hodgson's 4-1 or something like that. And so it's crazy to think that 2 years ago those three guys were assistant coaches for Alabama, and they're leading their programs who historically haven't been great programs into to some type of success, and especially that Kennesaw State program. I know I forget his name. Was it Abdul Ahir Ramin?
Raheem.
Raheem, who sadly passed away this offseason, um, brought that program back to like relevance within the NCAA tournament, and then Pett kind of was able to take over after that. Um, and so maybe he has a little bit more talent than what that program normally would, but he's still having some success there, obviously, with the big win over Rutgers. But for Alabama, they get the Players Era Invitational this week, the first of its kind, which it's a NIL based type of tournament where I think that it's interesting because per NCAA guidelines or bylaws, they can't directly pay players, but it's being advertised as an NIL tournament. And so whether that be it's probably going to end up being they have to go do some type of sponsorship marketing, whatever. And through those companies that are associated with the tournament, they're going to get paid. But what are your guys' thoughts? Maybe before we get into like the actual games on the type of format whether it be the playing format or the NIL format of this tournament.
Well, I like this a lot better as far as going and earning your money than just, what we see in the NIL market. I'll talk football just for a second. The kid who flipped from LSU to Michigan to go sign a $10.5 million NIL deal. Like, congratulations to him, but I think it's better for guys to actually and as a team to go out there and perform well to earn NIL money for themselves. I wonder, depending on the success of this, I'm sure the NCAA doesn't want to give up any money themselves, but I've always kind of thought, with bowl games or as you go farther in the NCAA tournament, I mean, we're watching those tournaments, we're watching these bowl games because of those guys, and maybe that's an opportunity, especially for the bowl games where you see so many guys opt out, that has certain players maybe stick around a little bit longer and play those games if there is a NIL opportunity, if your team wins or whatever it may be. So we've seen kind of the impact of the players era as we start looking to next year's uh multi-team events, because we were talking in our group chat a couple weeks ago when they announced the field for the Maui Invitational, which I for years has been the premier multi-team event to kick off the year. I would put Battle for Atlantis right behind it. That field was shockingly light on names and teams that would typically gravitate you to the TV and watch them play. And because a lot of those teams are going to be in the players era tournament next year, so it'll be interesting to see how it actually shakes out. But I think this is a great opportunity. Maybe it's an opportunity as well where we get more neutral site games. We've tried to do that more in Birmingham and Huntsville, especially early on in the season, getting fan involvement, with the holidays where you may not have students there. Does that present maybe some one-off opportunities, not necessarily in a tournament style format, but one-off games where guys can be compensated, but also provide, a great product and a great event for people that aren't going to consistently see this, whether they have season tickets or whether they live in Tuscaloosa or whatever it might be.
Yeah, you kind of stole what I was going to say there. I'm really intrigued to see how this works out and what kind of success that the Players Era tournament has with players being compensated. And like you said, does a game in Birmingham or does UConn maybe have a game at Madison Square Garden or something like that, to where they're able to do some kind of NIL activity for them to earn something, if it's just a UConn versus Duke game or something like that, which they already have. But are you now able to market it to where players are going to make a little bit off of that? And again, I know it's kind of a tricky subject, because I have mixed feelings on NIL in general. Like, I I firmly believe in being able to contribute on your name, image, and likeness. Like, I firmly believe in that, but I think there's a gray area on, are you being paid to play, signing a contract, the tampering with free agency, essentially. So I think eh, I'm intrigued to see how this is all going to work, but I think it's going to be fun to watch this year, next year, and in the future. Also, are we going to see Maui, the Battle for Atlantis, and all these other MTEs try to start doing the same thing that the Players Era is doing? Because just like you said, Charles, with Maui's field next year, it was not as impressive as it normally is. And so are they going to sit back and say, well, maybe we should look into some kind of sponsorship to where we're going to be able to have some NIL events to go along with this?
You know, and this is literally off the top of the dome here while we were talking about this, as far as an idea, what would you guys think about having a 2 week period, right? Where it would be over Thanksgiving and maybe the following week, because after feast week, there's the ACC SEC challenge, right? There's the Big 12, Big 10 challenge, whatever is going on. How would you guys feel about getting rid of the MTEs, getting rid of those challenges, and having for Thanksgiving, having a regional type of event, or maybe it's like you have 16 teams from the Southeast, 16 teams from the Northeast, 16 teams from the West, 16 teams from Midwest, whatever it may be, however you want to split it up, kind of like as a pods. And those teams play in a bracket. And then the winners of those brackets the following week go to like a Vegas, go to like it'd be like a mini
Be a mini
NCAA
NCAA
tournament.
tournament, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And have those, but have it based off of NIL. So
So to me, anything to generate good games early in the season, I'm all for. I don't think you'll ever get rid of the MTEs like with the just because of the tradition of Maui. I know the Battle for Atlantis hasn't been out nearly as long as Maui, but you have those traditions, and I think those would be hard to leave. But you
And
could have it kind of like the NBA and I'm
exactly,
sorry to
yeah.
interrupt Charles, but have it kind of like the NBA in season tournament. That's it's an intriguing idea.
well, and when I think about these MTEs too, like they are going to locations that I think a lot of these kids, not just kids, a lot of people like us would like to go to. Like you're telling me I get to go to New York City for 4 or 5 days and play 2 basketball games in Madison Square Garden. I get to go to Las Vegas for a week. I get to go to Hawaii for a week, go to Charleston for the Charleston Classic, go down to the Bahamas. I know there's other tournaments in the Cayman Islands. I always find it funny these tournaments that are in the conference centers, and you see the chandelier still hanging down from the top as they're playing basketball. But that's why I don't. I think you're still going to have these multi-team events because they are in very unique locations that a lot of these players probably would have never been to previously. And so they get that experience while also getting to play basketball too.
So you don't think that the Emerald Coast Classic is a destination type of event that Alabama should be playing in every season?
No.
I think if it was better than playing at Northwest Florida Community College, might be an okay event.
Yeah.
If I
Whatever happened to the ESPN? Is the ESPN MTE still happening, like in Disney?
The one in Orlando,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
they've shrunk it from 8 teams to 4 teams. It's Florida, Wake Forest, Minnesota, and Wichita State.
Oh, okay.
Seems like
And
Wichita State is in that every year. Well, I mean, we
yeah.
played Wichita State in that.
Well, you have to understand they don't see water often, so they got to get these.
Hey, I know all about Wichita, Kansas.
um, but no, I just find the concept so intriguing, and I'm curious on how the players era even was able to get this okayed by the NCAA, because it feels like it's a direct contradiction to everything that the NCAA has stood for the last however many years, right? Um, and the fact that Alabama was kind of ballsy enough to be like, yeah, I mean, I think Alabama was one of the very first teams rumored to be a part of it. Um, and I remember we talked to Greg Byrne, and he was like, "Well, I can't comment on that because it wasn't done." And this was back in like March. And like he said that the concept's interesting, but there's a lot of legality stuff that they have to sift through, and so that's kind of where they were. But outside of the actual concept of the MTE, let's get to the games that'll get a little bit. First, you have the Houston game. Alabama's playing Houston, Rutgers, and then whatever third, however they're going to figure out the third, you know, team. I know they have this whole structure with like points differential and all of this, but I think that was because what Creighton had some type of like religious thing that they said that they couldn't do on Sundays, and so they had to completely change it up a couple months before. But I think Charles, you kind of did some research on our opponents. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I just start with Houston. I don't think you have to do a ton of research to know that this is a really good basketball team, and it's been a really good basketball program over the past couple of years. Kelvin Sampson's done a great job there. They've come out and they've shot the ball really, really well. They're shooting about 48%, almost 50% from the 3-point line. And they're not a high volume 3-point shooting team like us, where they're taking 30 attempts. They're averaging about 20. But if you're knocking down, 9 or 10 of those a game, that's about what we are currently doing right now from the 3-point line. And their leading scorer, Emmanuel Sharp, is 11 of 15 on the year from the 3-point line. So you put that with what they've really been built on the defensive side for years, always pretty much been a top 5 KenPom team over the past couple of years on the defensive side. This will be a great challenge for us. I think just with this tournament and with this being the first game, we are going to learn a ton about our team. I mean, we've already started learning more as we went on the road against Purdue and having the win against Illinois and Birmingham this past week. But as you know, as we just talked about in this tournament, where you got something on the line, monetarily, as far as you win this thing, you get more NIL money. But these are teams that you're going to have to beat if you're going to compete for a national championship. So I think I, I'm very interested to learn about our team. I expect us to be focused. I expect us to be ready to bring our hard hats into this game. Is this an opportunity where we're still tinkering with lineups? Who knows? Again, at the end of the day, a win or loss in this game won't really mean much as far as just continuing to build the resume and building on the seed line and stuff like that. But it'd be great to see us take the approach of, this is a must-win game, or just that we're putting our best foot forward in this game. I mean, we did kind of see that in the Illinois, I feel like, with the shakeup and the starting lineups. And obviously, we still got some other guys that need to get going. We talked about Jared Stevenson, Mark Sears coming off a game where he didn't score. We still got guys that we're expecting more of, and they're expecting more of themselves as well. So I'm very, very intrigued by this game. Of course, very interested to see how we approach it, and with how good Houston has been doing on the opposite side. How much better can we play on the defensive side? Do we quit running past guys on the 3-point line? Can we get in a stance and guard? And then when they do shoot and miss, this is a game where you got to win the rebounding battle too. So can our big guys take care of the glass against guys like Jawan Roberts and Milos Uzan, Joseph Tugler, and let us get out and run and score in transition before having to play against their set defense?
And
So,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
go ahead. No.
So the few things that I'm really curious to see, and I think are kind of the keys are, one, are our guards improved in drop coverage. Um, a lot of our issues in the Illinois game were not necessarily Cliff or Grant or Aiden Sherrill. They were our guards not getting around the screen to get on the hip of the guard to push him in, or get on the hip of the ball handler to push him into the big. So it kind of put our bigs in a bind there in drop. So now, uh, Illinois was a good screening team, and they did move a lot on their screens, so they got away with some illegal screens too. But anytime you have a big body like that setting a screen, it does make it a little tougher. So I'm curious to see how much we've improved on that, and if we throw any other wrinkle out at them. If we hedge a little bit if Cliff is out of the game, and if Grant's playing the 5. I felt like when Grant had to play the 5 last year and we went to hedging ball screens, he was better rather than having to play drop. So how we play the pick and roll game on both ends. On the offensive end, Houston likes to trap the pick and roll. They like to hard hedge the pick and roll. And then they like to do what's called tagging the roller from the guy that's guarding our guy that's in the backside corner. That defender comes and tries to do what's called tagging the roller. And basically, you cover him until the hedger can recover. So, how do we handle that? Our answer to that has always been a short roll. And so you set your ball screen and then you just roll to the free throw line. And then you can either attack from there or you spray it out to a shooter. So we haven't really seen Cliff do that yet. So how is Cliff going to be able to do that? Are we going to be able to find a shooter in the corner? What's he going to be like attacking? Is he going to be able to stay out of foul trouble from that? From attacking from the short, from the free throw line, is he going to get, an offensive foul or two? That's my, biggest takeaways from what are we going to see?
So for those of you who are listening and are kind of curious about Michael's background, he does coach basketball if you can't tell, or previously coached basketball. I don't know if you're coaching anymore currently.
I'm not.
I have a couple of questions. One, Nate Oates has made a comment about bad passes, right? Specifically bad passes to Jaren Stevenson in the corner. Do you think that Jaren Stevenson's going 0 of 16 is largely attributed to that, or do you think it's just I personally think Jaren's kind of rushing his shot a bit. He's kind of trying to will it in, and I think by doing that, it's kind of messing up his rhythm. But do you think that the bad passes are a pretty significant cause of him not making shots?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of he's having to catch, like there have been a lot of passes that he's had to catch at his knees and off to the right, and that does contribute. When you're not catching the ball in right in your shooting pocket, then it makes it a little more tough. If you're not if you're just not a knockdown shooter, he's a rhythm shooter. He needs to be able to catch that ball right in rhythm, and let it go. But to what you just said, I think there's that too. I think he is trying to will it in. I think he's pressing a little bit too much. He's the type of guy that, which we saw in the Elite Eight, he needs to see one go in. I think if he can just see one go in, he'll relax a little bit. It's also a lot like what we saw with Noah Clowney. When he went through didn't he miss like
21.
21 in a row? And the time when he hit one, it came at a huge time at Arkansas. So I think he just needs to see one go in. Some of it is some passes. I think some of that also is Nate Oates not wanting to put not blame, but he doesn't want to get into Jaren's head, right? Like another coach in the state did with a certain guard that's now on our roster.
Second best shooter on the team, by the way.
Yes. So I think a lot of that is trying to keep Jaren's confidence up.
So secondly, we talk a little bit about Mark Sears' struggles, right? And these aren't normal struggles that we would see where, oh, he's getting defended really tightly and he's just forcing tough shots and he's not making them. I mean, he's missing wide open shots that he hasn't missed the last 2 years at Alabama. What do you think is kind of going on there from a Mark Sears point of view?
Go ahead, Charles.
Oh, I was asking you.
Oh, my fault.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm the new guy.
Yeah, you're the coach. You're the coach, remember?
So a lot of it, I think, is the same issue. I think it's Sears. So I think it's Sears trying to show scouts. I think a lot of it may be Sears trying to show scouts what he is still capable of. I also think he is playing harder on defense. So his legs, I don't think he has his legs aren't quite as under him yet because if you watch him, he is using a lot of energy on defense. So that does contribute to it some. And really, if you listen to one thing that Oates has talked about in the past of his times when he was at Romulus and when he first got the job at Romulus, they ran this same offensive system, but they were also full court pressing. They were trapping. They were running jump trap. And he said they became a bad shooting team because their legs were dead. So I think with as hard as Mark is guarding on defense now, or at least the effort he's giving, I think it's just gonna take a little bit of time to get his quote unquote sea legs under him.
So, Charles, what do you think's going on with Mark Sears?
I think it's not just him. I mean, it's a lot of the guys of just pressing and whether it's bad, not really catching it, where you want to catch it, you're having to move or shift a little bit. Probably there's probably a few attempts that he's taken that are a little bit deeper than what they need to be, just knowing the offense that we have. But I think this just kind of became a symptom in the Arkansas State game. I mean, we came out in the first game against UNC Asheville. We only shot 18 threes, but we hit 8, and the offense was flowing well enough. We were getting to the rim, finishing at the rim, going to the free throw line. And then we get in the game against Arkansas State and McNeese State, and we're just not as crisp offensively. We already talked, Arkansas State was really choppy with how many fouls were called in that game and going to the free throw line. So I think if I had to guess, it's a mindset thing that some guys like Aiden Holloway and Grant Nelson shot themselves out of it against Illinois, starting off as well. And some guys like Stevenson and Sears and probably a few others, once that first one goes down and you get to take that deep breath, everything else will kind of fall into place. Um, I think all three of us agree while we don't want Mark to go over, and that's not something we want to see. We're all confident Mark Sears is going to be a guy if he's not leading the team in points, he's going to be the top two. He's going to average something probably like 15 points a game minimum, and he's going to be just fine, for us going forward. So I think it's just a little bit of angst throughout the team that seemed to finally be working itself out against Illinois in the last game.
I also think when you cut down on the rotation a little bit, it'll work itself out too, where players can get into a little bit more of a rhythm. And that's not. I'm not being negative about that at all. I mean, uh, Nate Oates has to try and figure out what the best rotations are right now. And so I think when you let players get in a little bit more rhythm, you'll start seeing a little bit of what we saw against Illinois.
Well, and we did cut down the rotation in Illinois. Mo Diabate didn't play very much. Obviously, Mark Sears didn't play the final 11 minutes. Clift only played 10 minutes because of foul trouble. And so you kind of, just because of that, and also still not having Chris Youngblood, you did have to cut the rotation. And you saw guys like LeBaron Filan get into a kind of flow state, a kind of groove, and Aiden Holloway too. On the flip side of the bad, right? Let's talk about the good. And this is not just for you, Michael. So Charles, you can answer this one too. What have you guys seen from LeBaron Filan the first two? I don't want to talk about the McNeese and Arkansas State game. I want to talk about the two big Power 5 games. What have you guys seen from him that I mean, I have my thoughts, but what are your thoughts on him and just kind of the type of player that he's going to be for Alabama?
The biggest thing that I see from him is the confidence. Mackey Arena didn't phase him at all. And you can't say that about a lot of true freshmen. And, he is, I would feel comfortable right now if he had to be the real starting point guard getting, 28 to 30 minutes a game, 32 minutes a game. He just, because of the energy that he plays with, and now I don't want to jinx him at all, but he plays smart with the ball too. So I don't have his assist to turnover ratio in front of me, but he seems to play very smart with the ball. And to me, his energy is infectious, and it goes throughout the team. Like, he reminds me a little bit, and I know this comparison's been made on X as well, but uh, plays with a Colin Sexton esque energy.
I think he had it was either 0 or 1 turnover versus Illinois.
Yeah,
So
it was a 9-to-1 assist to turnover ratio against Illinois, which is phenomenal for your
Outstanding.
fifth ever college basketball game against a team that I was impressed with Illinois before coming into the game. They've obviously got some players. Illinois is going to be a good team. That's going to be a quality resume win for us going forward. Getting back to LeBaron, he's a guy who can score at the rim, and I that's something that travels. It doesn't matter what gym you're playing at, you should be able to make a lot of layups. So having a guy like that that can score at the rim and force teams to have to help off of our other shooters. Like when we played Kentucky and Florida last year, they defended us where they were not going to leave shooters on the 3-point line. So if we made a drive, there wasn't going to be any off-ball help to collapse to where we could then spray out to a shooter. They did that a few times, and that's when Sam Walters hit a couple threes and in Tuscaloosa, and we were able to claw back and get that game to overtime and eventually win. So guys like LeBaron, I put Mark Sears in that category. I think Chris Youngblood's a guy that can be in that category. We saw it a little bit from Grant Nelson with the threes that he hit, and I also think Illinois' maybe lack of athleticism with their bigs kind of allowed Grant to be able to attack the rim a little bit more from outside the 3-point line. But having a guy like that that can get to the rim, get to the free throw line as well, but coming off a game where he had 9 assists, that means he's obviously got good court vision. So when people do collapse, he can either hit somebody for a lob or he can get a paint touch and kick it out to somebody for hopefully a clean looking three. It just allows us to be even more dangerous through one player and get it out to guys like Mark, Latrell, Aiden, whoever it may be, standing at the 3-point line to get a clean look.
And what I like from him is that he's kind of letting the game come to him. He's not trying to force any actions. And he's happy to do whatever he has to do to help the team win. Again, like, he gets excited when he throws a lob and somebody else throws one down. He gets excited when he sprays one out to the corner and we knock down a three. He genuinely plays with a love for the game, and it's fun to watch.
Are you trying to say he plays the game the right way?
He plays the game the right way.
But that's contagious too, or that can be contagious. I feel like, the past 2 teams we've had, Brandon Miller was a guy like that was celebrating for other guys when they hit a three or got a clean look. I think about last year's teams, the win at Mississippi State, the win at Georgia, guys like Aaron Estrada, just the joy in the team winning, whether they had a successful game or not. So having a young guy like that is enjoying the success of others as well, hopefully will continue to build the team chemistry that this team needs as we continue to go throughout the year.
And someone made a joke on Twitter that he said that he said LeBaron Filan is the iOS update to Aaron Estrada, which I think it's the perfect kind of description because, and Michael, correct me if I'm being completely off base here. I think Mark Sears plays better off ball than he does on ball. 100%.
I agree. I think he does.
I think Mark, when he gets the ball in his hands and he's supposed to initiate the offense, he gets too caught up in trying to run the play rather than letting the game come to him. Mark Sears is best when he gets a catch and shoot three, gets in rhythm, he can go 6 of 8 and have 20 points, right?
Yeah, he's better, and not just better, but he's really good at it with the secondary attack, and then obviously catch and shoot. But when he's catching the ball and putting it on the floor, um, and attacking when he's already on the move, that's when he's really dangerous getting to the rim. I agree with that completely. We're better, and we've seen it. We saw it. We saw it in Brandon Miller's year. We saw it last year. Our offense is better when there's two full-time ball handlers on the floor, and even sometimes three.
Well, and we saw it versus Illinois too.
Right.
You had Aiden Holloway and LeBaron Filan out there, and that's when Alabama started pulling away in the second half. Is when those two guys were out there facilitating and making the shots that they needed to make. And I think that for Mark, and this isn't me turning this into a bashing Mark podcast because I love Mark Sears. I think he's arguably the greatest Alabama basketball player to play at Alabama. Um, but I think when you're out there trying to prove a point as to why you deserve to be in the NBA instead of just letting your play speak for itself, I think at that point is when it becomes sort of an issue. And I think that that's currently kind of the mindset that Mark's kind of dealing with right now, where like LeBaron Filan's letting the game come to him. He's not trying to force a shot. He's not trying to make the play that's going to win him the name Naismith, right? You can't win the Naismith in November in basketball. You can, it helps winning the Naismith in November, winning basketball games and playing well in those basketball games. And I think that that's kind of the minds, not the mindset, but that's kind of what I'm seeing from Mark, at least at this point in time.
Well, it's that you've got to do what grabbed people's attention in the first place, and that was just your shot, your playmaking ability, and just combine that with showing that you're a little more capable of staying in front of the basketball on defense, which I think he's trying to do. But he's just like we both said, he's just got to stop pressing and let the game come to him and just get back to playing with the joy that he played with in the NCAA tournament.
I think it was 2 weeks ago when we were going through, who was having to play a different role on this team. And we thought, Mark and Latrell are basically playing the same role. But if you think about it, I mean, we do have so many more weapons this year. Mark is kind of having to play a little bit different role where he doesn't necessarily have to be that guy every night. He doesn't have to go for 35 or 20. And I imagine, that's going to take a little bit of time to, like you said, allow the game come to him. And, 2 years before that, if Brandon Miller wasn't playing well or wasn't getting shots, we were relying on Mark to be the guy to do that. So there's been a lot put on his shoulders the past 2 years, and there's still a lot on his shoulders this year as well. But he's got more help, and 5 games into it, that's going to take some time for him as well to know that he's got all these guys that he can rely on too, and that he doesn't have to go out there and do it every night.
Also, there were games last year where he played all 40 minutes. He was playing 35 minutes a game, 36 minutes a game. And so when you play that long, you're going to kind of, even though you're maybe getting tired, you usually can fight through that on the basketball court and you're in rhythm. But you're also, even when you make a mistake, it's not as big of a deal because you have more time to play your way through that, right? Because you're on the court, you're getting to play through it. When you're not playing as many minutes, you're kind of, you're on the bench thinking about, well, what should I have done differently there when I'm in the game, um, or something like that, if that makes sense.
And I think another thing is in bringing up his role last year. How many games last year would you would we have scored 100 points if we sat Mark out the final 11 minutes of the game?
None.
And we did it without Mark scoring a single point and sitting out the final 11 minutes of the game, right? And I'm not saying that's a Mark Sears thing. I'm just showing the depth of the team and the quality of the players around him, which he's played with Brandon Miller and Noah Clowney, yes, and Charles Bediako, who are NBA players ish. I know Noah Clowney and Brandon Miller are NBA players, but Charles Bediako is on the G League. Um, but none of those guys outside of Brandon Miller were scoring threats, right? Last year, we had guys that could score, but we didn't have scoring threats. I feel like there's two very different distinctions there, right? Um,
They had to be set up.
exactly. That's my point.
And
Like I'm
he was typically the guy that had to set them up.
exactly. And now this year, LeBaron Filan, I mean, he's getting a lot of his points attacking the basket, creating for himself. Aiden Holloway, he's catch and shooter, so obviously needs to be set up. Grant Nelson's doing a lot of ISO dribble to the basket, doing things himself. Jaron Stevenson, when he was playing well at the beginning of the Illinois game, he was driving to the basket, setting himself up off the wing, right? So Mark, I think, needs to learn how to play within that type of dynamic of facilitating and picking your spots to be effective within an offense of players that are talented enough to go get their own baskets, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Well,
he needs to attack the rim a little bit more.
that's what I was about to say. I think one huge thing that would help Mark is to get to the free throw line early Tuesday night. Get his shot back in rhythm, get to the free throw line. Um, and then again, like we just talked about with Jaron, like we talked about what Grant needed when he did it. See one go down, get the ball in the basket, and then the basket starts looking much bigger to you.
Absolutely. Well, we haven't even talked about the Rutgers game.
I want to make one more point about LeBaron Filan, just real
Okay.
quick. Well, I just want to say I think we've won the trade with Kansas. That's all I want to do.
I made a joke today. I said we traded Rylan Griffin and Matthew Gibson for LeBaron Filan. Because if you don't know, Matthew Gibson's covering Kansas right now. So you might discern whether or not that's a win for Alabama or not. So Charles, do you have the Rutgers kind of preview?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Rutgers, it basically the two guys that are going to headline their team are obviously Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. It's two guys that are projected to be lottery picks in the upcoming NBA draft. What I do feel like I know about Steve Pikiell's teams is they're going to be hard nosed as well. And when we did our non-conference preview, I said I thought this was going to be the toughest game on the schedule. I still believe a lot in that. There may be tougher games out there just from a more complete team. But coming off this game against Houston, and now you got to play Rutgers with these two phenomenal players and the style that Rutgers is playing or has played under Pikiell, I think this is going to be a very challenging game. Of course, Cliff being a part of it too makes it intriguing as well with him playing up at Rutgers for the past several years. Um, Again, they've Ace and Dylan they're both averaging about 20 points. That's where their scoring is coming from. A quick look at their box score against Kennesaw State. It was basically those two guys. They didn't really get a whole lot of help. So when you get into this game with Rutgers, if these two guys get theirs, they're good enough probably to beat you if they do that. But at the same time, if you can just hold these two and not let a third guy come with them, then you should feel comfortable winning this game. this will be another team, Big Ten team, that will be a quad one opponent for us. That you get a win, and it's only going to look better as the season goes on. So, um, I don't have a whole lot on Rutgers, just what I know of their program, of what these two guys are projected to be, and just trying to gauge what our mindset will be coming off the Houston game. If we can come out mentally focused with our hard hats, not only is that encouraging for this game, but it gives me a lot of encouragement for the rest of the season of the maturity of this team and being bought in to what the ultimate goal is of getting to the Final Four and a national championship.
I think if Alabama comes out and beats Houston, I think they're winning the whole tournament. I really do. I think that this is a gut that Houston game's a gut check game, and I think that Alabama's going to be able to lean on their depth versus Rutgers being in a back-to-back game, and also lean on the experience of their team. A lot of what Rutgers is going to be relying on are two true freshmen in Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey that haven't been in those type of games thus far, right? Um, and I think a lot like how Alabama was with Brandon Miller, where yeah, they're uber talented players that can win you a bunch of games, but when you're going up in against an experienced team that has a lot of guys that have played these types of games, that ultimately is going to win you the game, such like what we did with Alabama versus San Diego State a few years ago. And I think ultimately, I think the depth and the experience of Alabama is going to lead them to a victory versus Rutgers.
Well, I will say this real quick because we like to talk about Ken Palm numbers every once in a while. Um, Rutgers is currently 24th in the country as it comes to the top 25. Would not expect them to be there tomorrow with the loss to Kennesaw State, but they're 78th overall in Ken Palm. So I guess voters, coaches poll, whatever, a little bit higher on them than what their analytics are showing right now. And they're a team that really hasn't played anybody as it relates to their non-conference schedule. And their tempo is not terrible. It's 113, so it's in the tough upper third of college basketball. But when I look at their schedule, they've only had one game where they've gotten over, excuse me, one game where they've gotten over 77 points. They scored 77 today. They scored 98 against Monmouth. Everything else has been in the 75-point range. So it's a game where, like, if we have, I guess what Evan Maya calls a kill shot, if we have a 10-0 run, I don't think Rutgers is built to get back into games like that, even with Ace, even with Dylan. So if it's a game where we're hot from the outside, I don't think they can catch us.
I think if you look at the history of a Nate Oates team in an MTE, look at the second and the third game. Look at how well we've shot. You know, typically as soon as we get the feel of the environment, we usually shoot the ball pretty well. So I agree with Christian. If we win the Houston game, we're going to win the whole tournament, in my opinion. And so I really like our matchup. I do think it's going to be a fun matchup, fun style. But I think with the way we typically shoot in the second and the third game of a typical MTE, I think that's a game that we're going to be okay.
What time's the Houston game on Tuesday?
7 p.m.
Okay,
Central Time.
Central Time in God's time zone.
God's
Yeah.
time zone. Yes.
All right. Yeah. Just so everyone knows, I always try to put the times in God's time zone, as most everyone that listens to this is in Alabama, and I'm in this God-forsaken time zone that will have games. I think the Rutgers game's at like 11 p.m. my time or something like that.
Yeah, it's 10 p.m. your time.
Yeah. So you just, well, so for our schedule, I think we're doing a pregame space tomorrow. Tomorrow meaning I guess it'd be today, uh, as in Monday, because this would be releasing on Monday. We're gonna do a pregame space for people that want to tune into that, just because people would ask for it. And then we might do a postgame space of the Houston game. One, depending on outcome, and then two, I have family coming into town. It's Thanksgiving, so depending on everyone's schedules as well. But we aren't going to do a space on Wednesday. We're not doing a post game space just because that's my family's Thanksgiving. And then Sunday or Saturday, we probably won't do a space, post game space on that, just because again, family time. But we might do something on Sunday. I don't know yet. But that's kind of our schedule for the week.
Quick quick thoughts of, because we will have a third opponent out there. We don't know who it is. I think we're all in that it cannot be Texas A&M.
Yeah, I think there's an SEC rule that it can't be Texas A&M, and I think it's highly unlikely that would be Creighton.
So that leaves San Diego State and Oregon. Who would you prefer seeing?
San Diego State.
A little payback.
Give me rematch.
I agree with that.
Louisville has scarred me from San Diego State. And I think I lost a part of my soul that weekend. Yeah, give me San Diego State. I don't think that that's better for the resume. I think that Oregon probably would be better for the resume, but ultimately I don't think either of those really matter. Um,
Let's
I,
just go ahead and play every Big Ten team possible.
Yeah.
Play Oregon,
yeah,
see how we
Oregon Big
finish in the Big
10.
Ten standings.
Yeah, yeah. Oregon Big Ten. I've completely forgot that Oregon plays in the Big Ten. Um,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
weird to say.
yeah. I don't know. I maybe we play Creighton. I mean, it's possible, right?
I
So
think so. There's no rule about that. I think I've seen before teams play in an MTE when they're already on the regular season schedule. So it's possible.
Wasn't
yeah,
there an MTE that we had a team that was on our schedule that we could have played, but like ultimately the bracket
Yes.
didn't.
Yes, but I don't remember who it was, but I remember exactly what you're talking about.
might have been when we were in the ESPN events invitational, like playing Liberty again or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, I think it was Belmont, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
We might as well play the best rivalry in college basketball. We might as well play that game twice.
Yeah, in a what 2 week span.
Yeah.
Might as well. Um, no, I mean I wouldn't be upset to play Creighton. I think it would be interesting to see Creighton twice in a season. Um, I just don't know how likely it is. I mean, I guess it would be pretty likely if we both win, both sides of our bracket, right? Then I mean that's a pretty easy choice for them. But I don't know. I don't really know how all that works, and that's what makes this so interesting.
What's going to be to me what's going to be interesting is if I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think Texas A&M is going to win that side. But what if Texas A&M wins that side and we win our side, and you're in a tournament for NIL?
Yeah.
How do you work around that? I'm sure they've obviously got to have a contingency plan, but that's really interesting to me.
And maybe it's something that they talk to the SEC and they're like, hey, like this is kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, did I miss anything else on the podcast? Did we miss any topics?
The
I don't
women
think so,
keep
right?
crushing, the women keep crushing it, but that's about
Yeah,
it.
are they did the are they're still 21st, right?
That's right. And that they've got, I think they're playing down the Emerald Coast here
They're
pretty
playing in the Emerald Coast. I saw that on Twitter. Barker's playing really good basketball.
I mean, they're not going to win the national championship, but they're a pretty good team. They're like I've said, if you get a chance to go watch them, go watch them. Um, they're a really really solid team. Probably the best team that Christy Curry has put together. Uh,
Leah Brooks, that plays for um, uh, Alabama, is one of my former students from last
oh,
year.
really? That's
Yeah,
sick.
from Hazel Green.
You think about this. They were picked to finish fifth in the SEC. Texas and Oklahoma in front of them. Texas was a number one seed in the NCAA tournament last year. I know Oklahoma's had a pretty good basketball program. If we hadn't merged this year with Texas and Oklahoma coming in the SEC, they'd be behind LSU and South Carolina, who we know how good South Carolina's been for years, and what LSU has been built into. Like that's very impressive. And again, I go back from when I was at Alabama in 2008, 2009, 2010. What that program has come from, like I don't Christy Curry does not get enough credit for what she's done with the women's basketball program. I know Wendell Hudson deserves some as well for saving it from Shelley Smith, but Coach Curry has done a phenomenal job to make this program relevant again and compete in the SEC.
Yeah, definitely go check them out. If you're in Mobile or what is it? No, it's Dothan, right?
Yeah.
Not Mobile. I mean, I guess if you're in Mobile, but if you're in that coast area, go check them out if you
They're in
can.
Destin, I think.
Destin, not
They're in
Dothan.
Destin.
Yeah. To go check them out. Go check them out in Coleman. Um, other than that, I think we're good to sign off. Like I said, we'll have a pregame space, I guess, tonight, and then maybe a postgame space following the Houston game, depending on one, whether or not I'm uh, still cleaning, and then two, if we lose, I'm just going to tell you I'm not dealing with that. So um, that's kind of where I'm at. But either way, I hope everyone has a happy holiday, has a happy Thanksgiving with their family. If you guys could, keep Joey in your thoughts and prayers, just from the family stuff that he's got going on. And we appreciate Michael for hopping on last minute. And maybe with football season being done, we get him on a little bit more frequently. But
Absolutely, anytime.
all right, well, we'll talk again soon and roll tide.
Well, Todd.
Roll Tide.